our Prime Minister was respected in the world. He wasn't dancing around and being laughed out of India or seen in a drunken stupor in some fancy hotel lobby playing the piano the night before the Queen's funeral.
Demonstrating himself to be the only party leader that actually keeps his promises, Pierre Poilievre tabled the Conservative motion for a vote of no confidence against Trudeau's Liberal government just as Parliament resumed this morning. We're going to show you the motion, his speech for the motion, and the initial debate that followed.
Let's take a look.
Orders of the day.
Government orders, business of supply, consideration of an opposition motion standing in the name of Mr. Poilievre, confidence in the Prime Minister and the government.
Mr. Poilievre, seconded by Mr. Nader, moves that the House has no confidence in the Prime Minister and the government. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
So normally there's a lot more text to these motions, but this is interesting. The Conservatives did exactly what they said they're going to do. The motion is literally just that the House has no confidence in Justin Trudeau's government. That's it.
Well, after this latest SDTC scandal explosion, I think, that we saw, I really don't know how the NDP and the Bloc, but mostly the NDP, are going to justify voting against this motion.
The NDP are going to use their usual scare tactics and say that the Conservatives are worse than Justin Trudeau, so they might as well stick with him. And the Bloc are basically going to say, oh, well, you know, Parliament just sat down. We need some time in order to negotiate to get our stuff that we want from Trudeau. So that's basically, you know, what their initial justification is going to be. But, yeah, after what happened last week with the SCTC scandal, like, come on, folks.
And I mean, out of those two excuses, I think the Bloc's is more plausible. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying out of the bottom of the barrel, the Bloc's is a better excuse, whereas the NDP going, well, we don't think that Pierre Poilievre's going to be, you know, a better leader. We think he's going to be worse than Justin Trudeau. And then you have this giant scandal that just cracked wide open. That's a really bad excuse.
Madam Speaker, this country made me a promise when I was born. It made the same promise to everyone in this room and across this country. I was born to a 16-year-old single mom who put me up for adoption, to two school teachers, and they taught me about this promise. The promise was that anyone from anywhere could do anything, that hard work would earn a powerful paycheck, they would buy you good food and a decent home in a safe neighborhood. It's that promise that brought my wife's family here as refugees from Venezuela. 6 people in a 2-bedroom basement, working-class Montreal apartment. Her dad up at the crack of dawn to hop on the back of a pickup truck and go out into the middle of a farm field and pick fruit so that he could pay the rent. Today, her brothers are a soldier, a carpenter. Her sister is a nurse. Her father has a business with his wife, and they have all succeeded. The promise was kept. It was that promise that got me into politics in the first place, and I was very proud to be part of a government that not only kept the promise but expanded it. With the lowest inflation in almost half a century, incomes after tax and inflation that went up 10%, we cut the GST, we balanced the budget. We did it all while increasing health care transfers faster than any government since that transfer. I welcome every single time they talk about my experience in government is doing the exact same things that I would like to do in the future, which is to expand the opportunity, expand the promise of this country. But that promise, after 9 years of the NDP Liberal Prime Minister, is broken. Everything costs more, with 2 million people lined up at food banks because they cannot afford food. This is a record-smashing number. 1 in 10 Torontonians now eat at a food bank every single month. Housing costs have doubled, so that 2/3 of young people believe they will never be able to afford a home. That has never happened in Canadian history. And we see it most tragically in our streets, where there are now 1,800 homeless encampments across Canada, across Ontario, 35 in Halifax. Quaint, beautiful, once prosperous Halifax has 35 homeless encampments. The Prime Minister admits in his own press releases 1 in 4 kids are not getting enough food. Malnutrition and diseases linked to it that had long ago been eradicated are making comebacks. We've lost 47,000 people to drug overdoses, more than we lost in the Second World War. These numbers are stories. They are human lives. When the NDP says, all these people can just wait, we don't need to fix these problems now, we could just delay another year and let thousands more die, thousands more lose their homes and move into dangerous tent encampments. Thousands more become addicted to government-funded drugs or be killed by a rampant career criminal released once again for the 76th time to unleash chaos in our streets. They say wait to those Canadians who are suffering the pain of a brutal economy, the worst economy since the Great Depression. The per capita GDP, that's income per person, is down more than at any time since the Great Depression. In fact, our economy per capita is smaller today than it was 10 years ago. Our income per person has dropped more than any other G7 country since 2019, the year before the pandemic, while the American economy has grown 19%, right next door. The gap between our per capita GDP and the Americans is now worse than at any time since at least World War II, and according to one liberal economist, Trevor Tom, the worst in a century. We've gone from winning the war of capitalism with the Americans, the tug of war, where they were investing 30 to 100 billion more per year in our economy than we were investing in theirs in the first 14 years of this century, to in the last 9 years, 450 billion more Canadian money invested in the States than the reverse. Wow. Canadian dollars building pipelines, mines, business centers, shopping centers, and businesses that pay American paychecks. I love America, but I don't want to bring jobs to Americans. I want to bring home those jobs and the Canadian promise to this country. That's why we have a common sense plan to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Axe the tax. This will be a carbon tax referendum, a carbon tax election. And I know that the media has worked hard to try and avoid me saying the words carbon tax, as we saw in the extremely dishonest and fraudulent report from Bell Media-controlled CTV, who's a company that is whose bonds have been downgraded to near junk status as its overpaid CEO empties the books to pay his wealthy friends an unacceptably and unrealistically high dividend. But the reason why he and his other cronies at that company are going after me is because he knows that I'm standing up for the people against the crony capitalists and insiders like him.
So if you're on any of the Conservative mailing lists, you would have received an email yesterday talking about this. Now, what I was doing is I was going through that email. I'm like, where's your source? Where's your source? And I couldn't find it. But luckily, our friend Andrew Scheer ended up putting out a video about this on YouTube, which, will show very briefly here what the difference is. And what you'll see is there was a clip where Pierre was talking to reporters, and he basically says, this is why we're going to be putting forth a motion for a carbon tax election. Whereas what CTV did is they spliced in some footage to make it talk about something very different. and it was extremely dishonest. This wasn't a mistake.
This was done purposefully.
This was done deliberately.
Like, you can't accidentally do something like this.
Right. And then CTV comes and they put out, you know, an apology. Like, shove your apology. Like, no, I'm sorry.
You guys wouldn't have apologized if you didn't get called out.
Yeah, that's like, you know, cheating.
I mean, there's something to be said for making a correction when you have legitimately made a mistake and somebody points out that mistake to you. You didn't intend to do it. It was a small error, perhaps, but still changed the meaning of something. We've done that before, where our loyal viewers have pointed something out to us, like, "Hey, Tanya, you used the wrong word here." "Oh, you know, I did. Sorry, and here's the correction." But this was malicious. This was, you had to actively go and edit that clip in such a way, and then when they got called on it, they were like, "Oh yeah, we didn't mean to."
This is reprehensible journalism. You're essentially making it's equivalent to a deep fake.
Yeah, I was going to say, and this is the way we're headed with deep fake technology, is that, like,
you can make anyone say anything.
Yeah, and it's disgusting to me because the mainstream media especially are supposed to be the professionals. Like, Ryan and I are not trained journalists, but we try our damnedest to make sure that what we're saying is the God's honest truth. And then you have a news organization like CTV that appears to be maliciously editing clips to say something that was not said, and like, they're the ones supposed to be having the journalistic standards, you know?
Well, and then they come and say, why are viewers turning away from mainstream media? I don't know. Like, and then they say, it's because Pierre Poilievre and those evil conservatives are telling everybody that, you know, we're doing a bad job, we're doing fake news.
Oh, it's those right-wing YouTubers.
Yeah, the right-wing YouTubers that, you know, have these, you know, late-night programs, you know, shame on us. So this is what we're talking about, and no wonder people don't trust the media, because they put out that stuff, they get caught. They sure as hell don't do it for Justin Trudeau. Just saying, guys. But why would you? Because he's the one who pays you government money. He's the one who goes and extorts Google to go and give you additional money. So, you know, no surprise there. So here's the video.
It's no wonder distrust in the media is at an all-time high. It's because Canadians are seeing more and more examples of how they twist the truth. But this one takes the cake. I've never seen anything like this. CTV News just got caught creating fake news. They were trying to promote a government talking point, and they took a clip of Pierre Poilievre making a statement about the carbon tax and giving Canadians a carbon tax election, and they spliced it together to do this.
While the continuation of the plan appears safe for now, the events of the last week have raised new questions over the plan's future.
That's why we need to put forward a motion.
The Conservatives announced a non-confidence vote.
That's why it's time to put forward a motion for a carbon tax election. That's why it's time we need to put forward a motion for a carbon.
The Conservatives
tax
announced
election.
a non-confidence.
Pierre never actually said that sentence. This is the lengths that they'll go to try to protect the Liberals and take your attention off of the carbon tax and all the damage it's doing to Canadians. This is what Conservatives are up against. Not just the Liberals and NDP, but their friends in the media, the bought and paid for Parliamentary press gallery that will do everything they can to present Liberal policies in a favorable light and make you believe things that aren't even true about the Conservatives. Next time you see a CTV news broadcast painting Conservatives in a negative light, ask yourself this one question. Did that even really happen?
So there you go. You know, this doesn't need like a long explanation. It was fabrication in the dirtiest sense of the word. And like every single person at CTV should be ashamed of themselves. And Vashi Capellos, I'd be ashamed to be working there if I were you.
Carbon tax election. Here's the existential choice. Do we go to a 61 cent a litre carbon tax, making us among the highest taxed fuel in all of the world? A tax that will grind our economy to a halt, that will force our truckers to leave to the U.S. where there is no carbon tax. Nobody left to bring goods to our grocery store, parts to our factories, jobs to our people. It will be a nuclear winter if this happens. That's why common sense conservatives will axe the tax. We will bring home jobs, paychecks, businesses, and opportunity with abundant, affordable energy. We will fight climate change and protect our economy with technology, not taxes, by approving large-scale green projects that generate nuclear, hydroelectric, carbon capture and storage, and other sources of affordable, clean Canadian energy will once again get approved when we repeal the anti-development law C-69, all of which will generate the revenues so that we can fix the budget. We will fix the budget by unleashing massive growth through the elimination of bureaucratic barriers and firing gatekeepers so that our projects can get built, setting the goal that all three levels of government should aspire to have the fastest building permits in the entire OECD. After 9 years of tax increases on entrepreneurs and calling businesses tax cheats, we will pass a bring it home tax cut to lower the burden on work, savings, and investment so that we bring home powerful paychecks and production to this country, lower, fairer, simpler taxes. We will cap government spending with a dollar-for-dollar law that requires we find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending. We'll cut bureaucracy, waste, and consulting contracts so that we can get the budget close to, or hopefully on balance as soon as possible to bring down interest rates, inflation, and debt. And finally, we will unleash the construction of homes by incentivizing municipalities to grant faster permits, free up land, and speed up and to cut development taxes so that we can build in safe neighborhoods with jail, not bail, for repeat violent offenders, to bring home the promise of Canada of a powerful paycheck that earns affordable food, gas, and homes in safe neighborhoods where anyone from anywhere can do anything. The biggest and most open land of opportunity the world has ever seen. That is our vision. That is our purpose. Now, let's bring it home.
Very good speech. Very good speech. You could hear the emotion in his voice.
Well, and those are practical solutions to get Canada back on track and fix the mess that Trudeau and his cronies dug us into. I've been saying it pretty much since we started the show that nuclear is going to be our way forward, and it has a bad PR problem, but it really is the safest and the greenest technology that we have for energy production.
The other thing I noticed in Pierre's speech is, he didn't say balance the budget. He said get as close to balancing the budget or balance the budget as soon as possible. So, well,
because the budget year over year has been like $40 billion in the hole, and that's racked up this huge, what was it, $1.2 trillion worth of debt. 1.3 now. This is insane. Like, could you imagine running a household like that where every year your household is 40 grand in the hole? Like, that would be awful as a house, like as a family. You couldn't do that. But our government is doing it year over year over year. Granted, it's on a larger scale because there's more Canadians than you would have in your typical nuclear family. But point being, like, you can't operate a family that way. You shouldn't be operating a country that way.
Yeah. And literally, it's amazing that the innovative solutions to many of the problems in our country is common sense. Imagine the world we live in when that's what it is.
I also wanted to point out just a bit of trivia. If you notice, the area behind Pierre has a lot of MPs in it, and a lot of MPs there are not sitting in the seats they normally would. Michael Cooper would normally sit closer to the speaker. The lady in the white blouse and black blazer immediately behind Pierre, she's in Stephanie Kuzi's regular seat. And why that is because most of the MPs right now, while this speech is being given, are in committee. So they've kind of gathered the other MPs from the Conservative bench and put them behind Pierre so that when the camera is focused on him,
shot.
Yeah, during CPAC or Parleview, that it looks nice and full, even though most of them are unfortunately not able to attend due to other commitments.
And then you'll see behind Karina Gold, she's a little lonely. But anyway, that was the speech. Really well done. Now, in debate, this is what happens. So you have a speech, and then you have a certain time period for questions to the person who made that speech. And all recognized parties get a question. And then if there's any time left, then anybody else that wants a question can ask it. And then what they will do is then they will move on to one of the other parties to then have the opportunity to make a speech and then move on to questions as well. So even while we're recording this, debate is still going on for this, but we don't have time to show you 8 hours of debate on this motion. So here is the questions posed to Pierre on his motion and his responses.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Government House, the Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the Leader of the Opposition for that speech. Although I think what is particularly interesting is his revisionist history of the time that the Conservatives were in government. But one thing that stood out to me in his remarks is that he said he was going to do the exact same thing as when they were in government. Now, what I recall when the Conservatives were in government was a country that was ashamed of what we were doing on the world stage. It was a country that was ashamed that we were not fighting climate change, and it was a country that was ashamed that we were putting forward divisive politics and not bringing people together. And that is exactly what I heard from the member opposite today. Madam Speaker, to get big projects done, we have to do so in cooperation with Indigenous partners. To get big things done, we have to do that with Canadians at the forefront. And what we are hearing from the member opposite is that he has no intention to do things to move Canadians forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Well, first of all, that's not even really saying anything against the motion.
Nope.
Because you can't argue with that, right? This House has lost confidence in the Liberal government headed under Justin Trudeau.
The end. Yeah, and projecting much, Karina? Just saying.
Well, I'm just saying that under the Harper government, our life was a lot better. I think the middle class was the largest it had ever been. Many Canadians, including us, were able to buy a home for the first time, were able to start a family. You can't do that anymore. Like Pierre had a video on his... I think it was on his YouTube channel not that long ago, maybe about a month ago, where he was speaking to a veterinarian and a lawyer. And usually both those professions make in the six figures, and they still were not able to afford a home.
Right.
Like, that's insane.
I have heard a lot of voices, and it's funny because when the Leader of the Official Opposition was speaking, nobody was making any noise on either side of the House. And now I'm hearing a lot of heckling. So I would ask members to please be respectful and offer that reciprocal silence to other individuals when they have the floor. The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
So, Madam Speaker, let's just be real here. The only reason there was no heckling on the other side of the House is because there was no Liberals over there aside from Karina Gold. So let's just stick to the facts.
I know that the Liberals are ashamed of our country and its past. That's why they changed the passport to take out Vimy Ridge, to take out Terry Fox, to take out other historical triumphs of Canadians. But I am very proud of how we upheld that heritage. We helped defeat the Taliban and ISIS on the world stage in partnership with Barack Obama, I might add. Speaking of the Americans, we got a deal on softwood lumber. We got an exemption to Buy America. We had open and free trade. Our Prime Minister was respected in the world. He wasn't dancing around and being laughed out of India or seen in a drunken stupor in some fancy hotel lobby playing the piano the night before the Queen's funeral. He was proud of this country. I am proud of this country. Canadians are proud of this country, and we're going to bring home the country we love.
And, I think that's a great point, is that Stephen Harper was a statesman. He didn't, parade around making a mockery of himself, of the country. Trudeau seems to think that he's some sort of actor.
No, it was obvious that Stephen Harper was there to work.
Yeah.
He took his job seriously. And, was he the most charismatic man around? No, but he was there to work. He was an economist, and he was trying to fix our country from the 2008 real estate crash. And, he wasn't concerned about meeting celebrities, about, people fawning over him. And this is what Trudeau is.
Well, and Trudeau seems to be more concerned about going on late night talk shows and having the host ask him pre-written questions that no doubt came from the Liberal Party. Yes, I am talking about the Stephen Colbert Show, and no, we probably won't be covering it just due to the copyright, but it was ridiculous. Like, why is Trudeau not out and talking to actual real Canadians? Even those events are staged.
Well, and all you saw, on the Colbert Show was an audience just fawning over Trudeau. And doesn't it say something where the Prime Minister of Canada has to go to an American television show to actually have people cheer for him? Because everywhere he goes in Canada now, he has everybody screaming at him because of how he's ruined this country. So maybe you better get back to work, Trudeau, because while you're, having a lovely time and having drinks and hors d'oeuvres with the people at the Stephen Colbert Show and meeting celebrities, people are suffering in Canada. They're living in tents. They can't afford anything. And it's just disgusting the way you are so out of touch with the people that you're supposed to be governing.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just have a quick question. We've been back just a week, and the government re-became a minority 3 weeks ago. That's what people voted for in 2021, so the government went back to being a minority. We've only had 1 week of Parliament so far this September. Is it not the perfect opportunity, therefore, to debate? Why such a rush for elections? Isn't it time to negotiate? We know that they're isolated. Not even their pets want to talk to them nowadays. But perhaps the Conservatives could work seriously with this Parliament, trying not to simply salt the earth behind them. We are trying to be constructive. What does the Honourable Leader have to say?
Well, of course, the Bloc is trying to be constructive and work with the Liberals because the Bloc knows that this is their last chance to be relevant. Once we have an election, the Conservatives are going to form a majority, maybe even a super majority. And anything that the Bloc wants, the Conservatives won't have to give them because the Conservatives don't need their vote.
Well, and here's the other thing to consider. Like, if... Let's say Quebec were managed to get some sort of legislation through, and then they said, okay, that's through now. Now we're going to have an election. If the Conservatives wanted, they could repeal that on their first, act in the House anyway. So it doesn't really even make a lot of sense here. But as the Bloc, why are you not working with the Conservatives to say, okay, listen, if you want to go to an election, let's get a guarantee that we're going to get this and this if we back you in a confidence vote. That's what I would expect them to do, because then they're actually going to get some certainty that some things are going to get done.
Well, I think the Bloc is looking at this as their last chance at relevance for the next 4 years. It's possible that the Bloc becomes the official opposition, but really, what relevance are you going to have? You're not going to be able to influence any policy of a majority government. Your consolation prize is kind of like having the most seats out of the Liberals and the NDP because they're doing so poorly.
Well, and here's the last thing I would say about the Bloc. Right now, they're on the upswing because of how poorly Trudeau has been doing and how the NDP has been backing them. In my opinion, they don't have a large window of opportunity here to take advantage of that public opinion swing in Quebec, because if they start standing up now and saying, oh, okay, we'll keep the Liberals in power, meanwhile the Liberals are maintaining immigration levels for Quebec, which Quebec hates, and absolutely they should hate that, then you're going to start to see a public opinion swing away from the Bloc and away from the Liberals and away from the NDP and towards the Conservatives. So they better be darn careful over this little gamble here. And I'm willing to bet that's why Yves Blanchette has, indicated that they're not going to be waiting too long for this, and the longest that they may wait is into October, at which point they may vote no confidence. So we'll see. But especially after all the stuff that happened at the SDTC committee last week, it's mind-boggling how they're just setting that aside and, just trying to get more out of this corrupt Liberal government. Like, why would you even trust them?
The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition. First of all, there's two mistakes in the answer. The Bloc Québécois has no leverage. They've offered their support to the government with absolutely no gains for Quebec, no gains for their party. The gains will happen under a common-sense conservative government that will respect Quebec's jurisdictions. And that's why the Bloc doesn't want a conservative government, because they won't have anything to complain about. When the Conservatives were in power under Harper, there was no Bloc Québécois by the end of it because there was peace. Peace with Quebec. Quebecers were saying, well, Canada's going well. They're leaving us alone in our jurisdictions. We don't need the Bloc. We don't need the Liberals. But now the Liberals and the Blocistes are codependent. Quebecers want to have their jurisdictions, and that's what we will allow.
So one other thing, and it's probably the most significant demand for the Bloc to the Conservative or to the Liberals, is the old age security pensions. The Parliamentary Budget Officer today had just come out and indicated how much this would cost if we did that. So that would be an increase of over between $3 and $3.5 billion per year for the next 5 years, to the tune of around $16 billion in order to do that.
Now, the Liberals have already kind of given themselves a stop at a $40 billion deficit. This year it was actually more than that, and that's why they introduced the new tax on second residences and capital gains. I doubt very much that they want to keep increasing that deficit, but let's look at the numbers again. If it's going to cost between $3 and $3.5 billion to accomplish this ask for the Bloc in regards to OAS, well, that's about 3 weeks worth of us servicing the debt, maybe 4, because every week that goes by, it's nearly $1 billion of taxpayer money that just goes out the window to service our $1.2 trillion debt that Trudeau has doubled since he's been in office. Like, what could that money buy Canadians?
I'm still hearing some heckling. I want to remind members to please not do that and to respect those who have the floor. Questions and comments? The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Let's review the member for Carleton's record on cuts to healthcare. He voted against dental care. He voted against farmer care. He voted to cut healthcare time and time again. Maybe it doesn't matter to somebody who's had the government pay his dentist appointments since his early 20s, but those costs matter to families. So I've got a simple question for the member for Carleton. Let's see if he actually answers this question. Would the member for Carleton cut the dental care program that has provided real relief to seniors and kids? Yes or no? Yeah.
So, Jagmeet,
he has no idea how taxes work.
He has no idea how anything works. Because how can you cut something that doesn't exist yet? So, like, you're trying to get this dental care. Well, he voted to cut dental. No, he voted against the implementation of dental care. Well, he voted to cut farmer care. No, he voted against the implementation of this not even farmer care program.
Yeah, it's like your boss saying, well, we're not going to be able to afford to give you a raise this year, versus your boss saying, we're going to have to cut your salary by 50% because we're already giving you too much money. Like, big difference.
The honourable leader of the official opposition.
I'm going to start by correcting the falsehoods. One, I encourage him to find one example where I've not voted to increase healthcare transfers. We voted, when I was in government, we increased healthcare transfers by 70%. Because of Stephen Harper's courageous leadership and strong books, the NDP voted against those increases. Now, they propose a pharmacare scheme that would ban union workers from keeping their private pharmacare plans. Unions have fought too hard and too long for the drug plans that they have to have the NDP ban them for using what it calls a single-payer system, which necessitates banning any non-government plan. When I was on the floor of Stelco, the men and women there said they want to keep the plan that they fought for. And I told them I will never allow the NDP to ban their private drug plans and impose an inferior government plan that doesn't work.
Okay, so have to call something out. Pierre has asked yes or no questions to Justin Trudeau many times in the past. He was asked a yes or no question. He didn't answer the question. So,
well, I suppose you could argue that the question, the premise was false. However, you're right. He didn't answer the question.
Because dental care is being implemented, and it is a fair question. Are you going to cut it or are you not? Now, why didn't Pierre answer the question? This is why. Because he doesn't feel he needs to answer the question right now. And this is about a opposition motion, and he doesn't want to risk alienating any of the potential voters out there that maybe are in favor of the dental plan.
Well, I suppose the proper way, or maybe the best way, because there's really no good answer for that question, but the best way perhaps that you could answer that question is that we don't know until we get in government, because we have to look at this mess of a budget and this mess of an economy that Justin Trudeau is leaving for us.
Yeah, I agree. I think the best answer to that would have been, I don't know, but I'll tell you, what we are going to be against, and then move on to the pharmacare answer. But, there's only a certain amount of time to ask and answer questions, and he probably just took this as the safest route out.
There are still individuals who are wanting to participate in the debate, and they don't have the floor. Again, I ask them to please be respectful and allow those members who have the floor to be able to speak without interruption. Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The member of Perth Wellington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know the member from Carleton spent the summer speaking with dozens and dozens and dozens of hardworking Canadians on factories, floors, and manufacturing facilities across the country. I'd like to know from the Leader of the Opposition, what was the message he heard from the hardworking people who build this country?
Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
The message that I heard was that after 9 years of the NDP Liberal government, everything is broken. Life costs more, work doesn't pay, housing costs have literally doubled. Crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder are common in our streets. But what most disappointed them, is, especially the ones who voted NDP, is the way that that party abandoned them under their new and radical leader. This NDP leader is not like the past NDP. He doesn't stand up for workers. He stands up for himself, for his own narrow self-interest. And he's abandoned those working people. He's worked to tax their fuel and their food. He wants to ban their pickup trucks and their hunting rifles. He supports policies to shut down their union jobs in resource sectors. And he wants to ban them from having their own private drug plan, which they have fought so hard to achieve. They reject the radicalism and the sellout of the NDP. They want a common-sense Conservative government that will bring home the Canada we love.
Do you think Jagmeet wants to fight Pierre again?
He can try. You can try. I heard Pierre works out, so.
Oh, it was just so stupid.
It was childish, and I mean, you as an NDP voter, if you are one, I'm not, but if you are one, I imagine that you wouldn't want your leader being standoffish and showboating and being aggressive. NDP voters don't really strike me as the aggressive type, and if you're on the fence about whether you're thinking about voting NDP or voting for somebody else, something like that might turn you off.
Well, and here's the thing, say what you want about Elizabeth May, but at least she's not going around saying, when I'm Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Neither is Yves Blanchette. He doesn't want to be Prime Minister because he doesn't want to be part of the country.
Right. So, anyway, after this, it was actually kind of rich because the NDP started calling points of order on Pierre for saying sellout. And they said, that's not parliamentary language, and that was a personal insult. Well, no, he said that the NDP sold out. He didn't say Jagmeet Singh sold out.
Oh, so that's why all of them were squawking, because they were all offended.
Yeah, they were all, meh, 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 meh. Well, here's the thing. Don't sell out your country.
Yeah, they did sell out their voters and Canadians as a whole to keep the government intact until Jagmeet Singh can get his pension. At least that's what it appears, because why are they not calling on confidence right now? It will need all three major opposition parties in order to call a non-confidence vote. So, I mean, if the NDP wanted to make it look like they were going to do something smart, then they could vote non-confidence, because the Bloc has already indicated that they're going to be voting confidence in this government. Therefore, the government will still stand.
Well, it's going to be interesting because, the NDP, they also sold this out for, I think, attention and relevance, because the last time, they were relevant was, ironically, in the 2014. They haven't been relevant, and they haven't been able to affect any change on this government, you could say, since, Trudeau took power. The issue is they signed a deal with the devil, and rather than just participating in a minority government and on a vote-by-vote basis, which would have put them in far better standing than they are right now, they chose to just say, no, we will back you no matter what.
Yeah. And I mean, we've seen the results of that. Back in March, when we were hypothesizing that if they had called an election, they could have been the official opposition, because at this point, NDP is never going to be like the governing party, right? Like maybe in 50 years, I have no idea. But right now, they're not going to be the government. The best they can hope for is to be the official opposition, which if they had campaigned hard enough, I fully believe that if they called an election in March, that the Conservatives would have been the government, and they could have had a very, very good shot at being the official opposition. But now the NDP is slated to lose even more seats. I think the possibility is that they could get as low as, 13 seats?
9.
9 seats. So that's what? About a third of what they've got now. Like, that is bad. Really bad.
And they deserve it. They deserve everything
they do
that's
deserve
coming
it.
to them. So, we'll see what happens, but I don't think anyone's expecting anything earth-shattering on tomorrow's confidence vote, but we'll be covering it one way or the other, and it's going to be really interesting to see what the polls say at the end of this week when they see that the confidence and supply agreement isn't as ripped up as Jagmeet would have everyone to believe.